What is up, Envoys? Today is going to be the first of hopefully many Soulframe video to come from me in the future. Typically, I cover a lot of Destiny stuff. We've done Remnant 2 stuff in the past, but ever since I got into Soulframe during the holidays, I've been rather addicted to it, and it's such an incredible game. And we have a lot happening with Preludes 13 coming potentially in 6 days at the earliest, could be later. We'll see. But in the last dev stream 12, it was made very obvious to us. We were made aware that Preludes 13 was going to be releasing a little different than some for DE to be able to gather some feedback on what we think about all of the changes that are coming to the game. So, what I'm going to do today is I'm going to go through some of the questions people have been asking in their Discord related specifically to P13, the massive virtue changes, and all that sort of stuff. To start off, I am going to go through just a basic overview of some screenshots I took from the dev stream, just to give you an idea of what some of these questions may be asking about. So if you've ever played Soulframe before, you may have seen the virtue menu, and in the past it's looked very different. In fact, I can just show you the virtue menu right now. And this is what the virtue menu looks like now. Shows you your life, shows you how much is pouring into each one, and each point is applied individually as you earn them from upgrading your packs. Now, right now, I am on Tetherin. I do have the 3 wilds, so that's why things may look a little inflated. So, we have here is there's no longer an ability to allocate individual points. There are going to be virtue prisms. Why is this not going to the next in folder? There they are. They're going to be virtue prisms that are going to be taking the place of applying each individual point, so that we're going to have more archetype style. Now, I think they've covered pretty much all the bases they would need to cover on the initial rollout of these things, with there being 12 options. You have diving into 2 virtues being all weighted into 1 virtue. You have your nice even balance like we have here with the one that is selected in the screenshot. We have the fact that virtues on armor are now going to matter. So not only are we losing the ability to individually spec points for virtues, but armor is going to scale with virtues now. One thing I don't think I have really a good screenshot to reference here is the fact that weapons are going to be changing pretty significantly when it comes to virtues and virtue scaling. Right now, in the game, if you do not have enough of a virtue, which I'm sure I have a weapon I can demonstrate this with, you actually lose some damage. And it's hard to really tell it here with my Dwellian because I'm very close to the required 20 grace. But I'm actually losing damage because I'm not fully at that 20 grace. That is no longer going to be a thing. It's always going to be a base, and it's only going to go up from there. That, I think, is a huge, massive change, which will really help a lot of newer players in many ways. Here we have the fact that tails will now be acquirable from world trees. I think that is a massive change. I personally, over the last, I guess, month or two at this point, have grinded every single faction in the game so that I can acquire every pact in the game and try and get closer and closer to having every item. And this is going to be just such a massive improvement, especially with the way that tier 3 tails throughout the map don't always give you the same rep. The tails scale with the level. So now you'll have a better idea of what you're going to be getting, which is definitely a step in the right direction. Of course, we have the Metal Bear, the Vadagar Bear, the the counterpart to the Vadagar Stag, which is super, super exciting. We have, of course, the new operation, the Orden. I am very excited to try this myself. After doing the collector event a couple times, me and some friends were talking about oh, will they do other NPCs like this? And there's my answer. They are. So that's going to be very, very exciting to see. And of course, our overview of everything that was talked about in the dev stream was the Virtue rework, the Orden, Vatadar Bear, World Trees, new weapons, which it looks like there's going to be some really cool stuff. I personally am a massive fan of the Gauntlet magic weapons in the game. I prefer range a lot, but I'm hoping that, and this is something I wasn't planning to cover much in the video, but the massive rework to combat that they're doing and the sound improvements and stuff, I hope I feel more drawn to melee. Melee is good, it is strong, it is very cool, the weapons are incredible, but it's always just felt much more clunky to me compared to range combat. And of course, we have what looks like might be a new pact coming with P13. It might not be, but we know for certain that this is most likely going to be the next pact we get, whenever it may be. And I'm assuming this is going to be like a duelist fencing inspired type pact based off the descriptions they gave. I cannot remember his name, but the gentleman sitting on the far left on the stream calling it Pokey Pokey. And of course, the Sky Castle. Who hasn't seen or wanted to go to the Sky Castle? Seeing this concept art was incredible, and that is going to be so exciting. So now that's been about 6 minutes. We've covered what's was given to us in the dev stream. So now let's jump in to some of these questions. All right. So then our next question here. Why was the decision made to limit the upgrade options for virtues in favor of having archetypes? Archetypes already existed in the old system but had no real functionality. Couldn't you just improve the old system without restricting the game's possibilities? I think this poster has a great point. We already have archetypes for the most part. I think what they're trying to solve, number one, is the courage meta. And of course, we already know what they're trying to solve. They're trying to solve the courage meta. They're trying to solve how confusing it is for new players and the fact that new players often never apply their virtues at all. And so you run into issues where they feel very weak, but it's because they're not upgrading their virtues. I think they need to try something drastically different. And while it may not be perfect, and I highly doubt it will be perfect at all on launch, it's important they experiment drastically while we're still in this pre-alpha state. And as was made abundantly clear in the dev stream, their main goal this year is to get all of these systems in places that they're happy with launching the game and having it be like just small tweaks and tuning they need to do. I have my own thoughts about how we're going to acquire the virtue prisms, but I know we're going to get to that at some point. I know someone asked the question, so we're just going to keep moving on. Will spirit envoys be able to not be one-shotted by bosses in Koga due to low armor values? Now, this question from Wicked is an excellent one and makes sense. It's a lot of confusing changes that they're doing. But the thing I would reference to here is the fact that with armor, they are going to be changing how armor scales and works, and the fact that armor is now going to have virtues tied to it. So I would expect that if you're really specced into Spirit because, you love Oshelda and you're all in on Spirit and you love your Spirit weapons like I do with the magics, you're just going to end up using the Spirit armor. The Spirit armor may just end up being the strongest thing for you to use. Or you may use like one piece of courage armor to have really good physical defense, but as you can see in this screenshot, that physical stat is tied to grace. It's tied to grace. So I think that's something we may just have to wait and see. I think it is a great point and a great concern, but I have faith that this is something that may actually be better than it is now when we finally get it. Will prisms do anything other than adjust the 3-directional slider for virtue alignment? Feels like that could have just been a slider in the arsenal if the prisms have no further depth to them. Also, once a few positions on that scale are available, there will be no further room for new prisms to be added to the game. I think that there should be no reason for prisms to be added to the game once we have these. like they should be shipping immediately with all the ones we could ever need, and we should just have them off rip, because so that way you can experiment with build crafting as soon as you get certain things. The grind to get packs, the grind to get armor, the grind to get weapons is in depth and long enough. Things like these virtue prisms, in my opinion, need to just be accessible immediately, even to a new player, even if they can't get the full benefit out of them. They need to just be there as an option. I think there should be zero grind attached to these, and if there is any grind attached to the virtue prisms at all, it should correspond with a pact. When you get a pact, you unlock whichever virtue prism you have it. When we get an option to disable auto lock entirely, nothing against it, just how I'm used to playing Souls-like combat. I agree. The combat system is far from perfect. I once again am hoping that a lot of these changes they're making will help me like melee combat a lot more. I hope a lot of the changes they talked about in helping to make the current system feel more fluid work. And I hope that we like this system enough that they're able to take and just add a traditional like lock on like you would see in Elden Ring and Dark Souls at some point. Um, I think it's definitely not one of those top priority things. I think a lot of the things they're covering with P13 and have made clear is their goals this year are much more important. And once those things are nailed down, being able to have like a traditional lock on would be something that I hope we get to see before the game launches. How will the virtue changes affect your envoy's maximum HP? On paper, and hear me out here, maximum HP may be higher. Depending on what you spec into, of course. But like HP right now, as far as I remember, isn't directly tied to like your courage. Well, actually it is, isn't it? Oh look, we just answered our own question, and I corrected myself immediately. I personally am not too concerned about that. Even when you're going from a courage build to other stuff, like health never feels like much of a concern. What is it? The Conqueror on Tetherin, you get health just from killing enemies. On every class, you have the ability to pull smite and gain regen from it, right? Personally, I don't think it's much of a concern. All day today, in prepping for this video, I have been keeping a Koga open to try and farm Agari for stuff with the new 30-minute cooldown. And I've gotten up to level 50 plus enemies in this Koga that I've been kept going way too long. At no point have I felt like I was in absolute dire danger. Now, yes, I am spec'd into courage more than some people, but I'm also spec'd into courage a lot less than others. Because I like to have more well-rounded. Personally, playing the game, I feel very well-rounded spec'd virtues are generally the best, even in the current system, even in the courage meta. And you only need a few extra courage points to really be able to take advantage of things. Because when you have your maxed out Estelle and you have the increased consecutive hit damage from the joinery, and you pop your Felist and you increase your damage so much, you're deleting Koga bosses. At no point do I see any concerns, any worries. You're deleting Koga bosses. And so the amount of health you have doesn't matter, because even in the hardest mode the game currently has, you're never in that much danger. And with the 520 health I have in this build, you take a hit from these high level enemies and you don't even feel that much in danger. So I would argue that if health is going to be brought down at all, it's a good thing. It's going to help the difficulty, especially with Koga hard mode. Okay, so how will virtues affect each ability exactly? Is it damage, duration, range, or other parameters? That's something we would have to go back and dive into the stream to give a real specific answer on or good insight into. If I remember correctly, I thought I made a screenshot for this, actually. I guess I didn't. But there was a point in the stream And I'm not going to dive through it now. I have it purposely paused here for the end of the video, but we'll get back to that, of course. Um, but what I do remember from the live stream is that each skill will be specifically tied to a virtue and will be in every way buffed by that virtue. That's how I remember them describing it. All right, so it feels an awful lot like the as described virtue rework is going to reduce the complexity of builds moving forward, over solving the two issues of people not investing points or investing entirely into courage. What will be done to prevent pacts from becoming single button playstyles, and why was the solution over improving how Spirit and Grace scaled abilities? This is another one of those questions where I completely understand the concern, but I think when we actually get our hands on it, we're going to see that all abilities and all virtues and all attunements with them are all going to feel much more equally powerful. At least that's my hope, right? And I think that's DE's hope too, is that everything will feel equally more powerful. Whereas right now, fully spec'd into courage with the right build, you can do 50,000 damage in one hit. With my spirit tethering weirdness that I use my bow and mostly just use my Estelle, like even only ramping up to just over 1,000 damage, like you're deleting everything. And if everything else is brought down to what I'm using now, there's still no issue. Things are still going to be ridiculous, and there's going to be very little of that difficulty or concern. So that's another question I think answers itself a little bit. How can we acquire the prisms? And while Steve did say not too grindy, how grindy is not too grindy? That's a great question. Obviously, I cannot answer that, but I will take this opportunity to say again that, in my opinion, there's two best options. And my second option, probably many people would hate because I know how grindy it was to acquire all the packs. And the one issue you have is the wild variants. So, like, how do they even have enough packs to acquire all 12 prisms? They need to just be given to us. I don't think there's really any other solution other than you make an envoy, you make your account, the virtue prisms are just there. I really don't see another solution. And like obviously the game doesn't have a knockout system at all, where once you acquire something, you cannot acquire it again. And if they are inevitably going to bring trading to the game, which I'm sure they are, outside of things like these virtue prisms, you can't have a knockout system. You would need a knockout system specifically for them, which is why I really, 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 really think they need to just be given to us. They need to just automatically be unlocked with the update for everyone, and no matter new envoy or not, and that's just it. All right. Will weapons lose their old attunements and get matched to the new attunement system? For example, will Bog and Myrtle become Courage attuned, and will Blitzel become Grace attuned? That's a great question. Obviously, one I can't give insight into. Many of Sarah's questions are like that, but I'm just going down the list here. And of course, I want to highlight some of these questions that I really hope we get answers from directly from DE before P13, or is very easily and quickly solved with P13. With spirit builds now meant to be spell casting glass cannons, do you plan to adjust the massive cooldown increase in Koga mode to keep it somehow viable? I agree. I do largely agree. This should absolutely be a concern with adjusting the cooldowns. And I will also say that while right now we obviously do not have wild variants for all of these packs, and we may never see wild variants for all of the packs, if you use Tetherin, Oshelda, or Siren, Tetherin especially, with the fact we've been in such a hard courage meta. Where is it? Which thing was it that I was about to... Akin. Max out your Akin. Like, that's just the simple solution to it. On every pact, regardless of what you're using, you should be maxing out your virtues. You should be maxing out your regen. because maxing out your regen, regardless of the pact, regardless of your virtue, is going to have a cooldown that's just fine in Koga. It's going to be just fine. Would I like to see them tune it a little bit, bring it down a little bit? Yes. But I think this is something we already have a really good option for that already exists. Will dagger scale with courage or with grace? I think this is one of those things where it may end up being the same. Like, just this is just giving my opinion here. I think these things may end up being the same. Like, you already have weapons that are the same type, but different ones scale with different virtues. So that's one of those things that I think, like, we already have a solution for it. You already have your answer. It's not going to change. Will ability tooltips / in-game text explain how virtues scale / affect specific pact abilities? At some point in the stream, Steve mentioned something like this. Again, I'm sorry, I'm not going through and finding these things specifically like I should. I'm being lazy. I'm recording this video in one shot with as little editing as possible, and I want to leave this to be played at the end. Anyway, they did mention something about, I feel like that something in lines of having more of that type of stuff that like explains, because like obviously right now in the game it's all very built to immerse you in the world, right? And they do such an incredible job of that. And regardless of what they did say in the stream, I hope that they absolutely take Druin's recommendation here and add more of that stuff. And I truly hope that when we get the game's full release, that's something that they have fleshed out. I am hoping they get crafted / obtained with packs that work well with the virtue spread. Oh, so this is exactly what they're talking about the virtue prisms. And they're talking about exactly one of the things that I said in terms of how we should acquire them. And that's that we get the virtue prism with a pact. Like, you unlock Tetherin, you get the courage one. You acquire Romeus, and you get whichever molded to. I think it's an okay option. Like, I really do think it would work on launch of this system. Is obviously we're still in pre-alpha, even with P13 coming out. And I do think it could work, and it could be a good test to say, hey, each of these virtue prisms is going to come with a certain pact, and then it gives them a tool to tie a pact to a certain like virtue or combination of virtues. But obviously there's a lot of implications that come with that as well, right? In terms of like lore in the world. So that's where it gets a little bit more difficult, right? Because that's always been a very big thing to DE. And like when I played the game initially, I realized that like the world itself and being immersed in it and the lore and all that stuff is clearly very important. So I'm glad to see other people making one of my recommendations, but I think they need to just be given to us. Can you give us more information on weapon scaling? The announcement said ranged weapons scale with grace, but magic weapons are ranged too, and what about short blades? I've said it a couple times. I think we already have this solution, and I think inevitably what I hope they do is just keep some of those things how it is. You have weapons of the same type that scale with different virtues, and they may just have to stay leaning into that a bit. And hopefully the changes they're making with the prisms and everything will just help enhance some of the things we already have. Since prisms now determine the spread of virtues, how have the virtue nodes in the pact upgrade tree changed, if at all? Obviously, I can't answer that. I'm not a dev. I don't know. But I am fully expecting it to be the same. Like, personally, I'm expecting it to be the same. If you look at some of these screenshots, if you look back through the dev stream, you can see there are still points. You just don't apply them individually. So I would fully expect that on the pact tree, this still does the exact same thing. It just increases that virtue. Like personally, that's what I would expect, is that it does the exact same thing. I'm gonna skip a bit here and kind of scroll down to some of the later questions. We're going to read just a few more of some of the peeps questions and wrap up here. I think, methinks. I hope you all have gotten a lot out of this video. I hope some of my explanations and reasoning for, like, I think some things are just going to be the same despite the fact that they're making it seem like it's going to be drastically different and completely different. I hope that helps. I hope I've been able to give some insight. My main focus of this video is to be really well spoken and well presented so that in the future we can just build and build and build on top of what we're doing. So yeah. How will the Virtue rework and shift in design approach impact the community's highly demanded Moth Pact? I love that. I love that. That is so funny. That's the type of question that's like, yeah, man, I'm with you. Yeah, yeah. Hi, DE. Can we all put the numbers that each prism will do to each ability when you highlight the ability and looking at the pact instead of guessing? Okay. So this is one thing again where I'm going to say expect how you get your points to be the same. It just influences the distribution. You're still going to be increasing your virtues through these upgrades and through just leveling up your pact in general. That's going to be the same. There's just not going to be a need to apply them. It's just going to change the distribution, and that's it. And that's the impression that I've gotten so far, and I really do think that that is true, is that it's not, you'll be able to see it. Like in this screenshot again, the numbers are still there. It's just heavily weighted in that direction, right? And clearly the reason they're behind on courage is because on whatever pact they have on, which is the Wild Siren, they don't have an upgrade to increase courage by the 2 points that first upgrade gives you. I think that's one of those things that, like, we absolutely can make some assumptions and already have the answer for. Why is build freedom being restricted? Why can't it just be better communicated to players what virtues do with the rework? I think the versatility of the current system gives more meaning to increasing mastery. Would having to grind for prisms make mastery less impactful? The latter part of their question, their response here, I agree with entirely. Having to grind for the prisms would make it dramatically less impactful, and is one of the main reasons that my primary opinion for how we should get the prisms is that they're just given to us. I do not think build freedom is being restricted. I think it's going to be made faster to deal with. They're now making a thing that can be applied to a loadout, so you don't have to constantly change your virtues when changing loadouts. As you can have a loadout now, but you have to go and manually change your virtues. So I disagree greatly that it's being restricted. I think it is being refined. And I don't think this is the last version of this we're going to see. I think we're all very well aware of that. And I think it is naive to assume that this is going to be the last version of this system or the last change to this system we're going to see. But I do hope it is a step in the right direction. When will we get something in-game that shows all stats so we can see what is changed when we make changes? That is a great question. It would be great if we could have something like when you're on here, like this space down here, right? Like, what if it gave you like little, like your weapon, here's your equipped weapon and how it changes, right? Here's your equipped armor, because like armor's getting virtue scaling, right? So like here's your equipped armor and here's how your armor stats are changing. But you also don't really need that because you have in the top right already your armor stats. However, it would be cool to have like here's your weapon, your equipped weapons. Here's how changing your virtues is actively affecting them. That would be really cool. That would be really nice to have. And from Bromius, the most recent question, can we get a roadmap of 2026? I have to read that one and have to end off on it because Bungie, where's my Destiny roadmap? Where's my Destiny roadmap, Bungie? And I hate to throw that in at the end of a Soulframe video, but like, hey, come on now. You guys know. If you're watching this video, you know who I am. You know that Destiny is my main game. and I go out and I do raid solos, and the contest raid in Destiny is the main thing that keeps me doing this. So there's my little bit of passion. There's my little bit of me. Let's watch this wonderful reading of this scroll, and we'll talk about what it means a little bit.
Hello, Envoys. I'm here today with my cat Yo-Yo, who has delivered me the strangest scroll. Don't know where he found it, but I told Sarah about it. She said it seemed important, so I thought I would just share it with you today on the dev stream. So, it reads as follows. The year 926 was known to elder seers. Peering in cool pools of mist, they peered our future clear. A horned beast, though hearing hard, heard a word his herd heard not. An omen's toad slow croaks were marred by fetid ills sick pawns begot. Okay, clear. A viling star of scarlet sword, heralding ascendancy. A babe on shoulders old, forewarned, fear the Fae who speaks in threes. The year 926 here prophesied in full, but fates of old are woven thick with threads our envoys pull. 6x10 D to M. So, make what you will of that, and have a great 926, Envoys.
So I let the whole thing play there for a reason, because if we didn't, at the end, you wouldn't have gotten the very important information that says that 2026 meant to be like 926, right? In the interest of time here, we're getting the Fraud Pact. I think they have very big plans for the game this year. There's a lot more that could be read into that, but the big things of that are Fraud Pact. When we did a Cat Pact, Yo-Yo better be in the name. Lots of people are asking for that, so I had to throw a little bit of that in there. But yeah, that's been the Soulframe, reading people's questions in the Discord about P13 and the virtue changes and my own thoughts on them. I hope it was helpful. I hope if anyone from DE sees this, it's helpful to them to have some of this stuff in one place. I am so excited for P13. I am so excited for the future of this game as a whole. And yeah, peace out. Thank you very much for watching.